Welcome to Tale Spinners, where we bring stories to life. In this video, we present to you Escape from the Stranger. Without further ado, let's begin. It was a dark and stormy night, and the winds howled like ghosts in the trees. Rachel huddled under her blanket, listening to the rain pound against her window. She couldn't sleep, no matter how hard she tried. Something was bothering her. Just then, a loud knock at the door startled her. She jumped out of bed and cautiously made her way to the front door. Through the peephole, she saw a tall, dark figure standing outside, drenched by the rain. Rachel hesitated for a moment, wondering if she should answer the door, but her curiosity got the better of her. She cautiously opened the door and peered outside. "Can I help you?" she asked the stranger. "I'm sorry to bother you," he said. "My car broke down a few miles back, and I was wondering if I could use your phone to call for help." Rachel hesitated for a moment, but something about the man seemed familiar to her. "Come on in," she said, stepping aside to let him in. As soon as he stepped into her house, Rachel felt a chill run down her spine. There was something off about him, something she couldn't quite put her finger on. But she tried to shake off the feeling and led him to the phone. As the stranger made his call, Rachel couldn't help but eavesdrop on the conversation. She heard him say something about the package and the drop-off point, but before she could hear any more, he hung up the phone. Rachel's mind raced with questions. Who was this man, and what was he doing here? And what was in the package he was talking about? As if reading her mind, the stranger turned to her and said, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to involve you in this. It's just that I have a package that needs to be delivered tonight, and I can't do it alone. I could really use your help." Rachel's heart raced as she contemplated his offer. Should she help him, or should she call the police? She didn't know what to do. Just then, a sudden flash of lightning illuminated the room, followed by a deafening clap of thunder. The power went out, plunging the room into darkness. Rachel gasped in fear, and the stranger quickly took advantage of the moment, lunging towards her. Rachel fought back with all her might, but the stranger was too strong. He overpowered her, tied her up, and took her with him as he left her house. Rachel had no idea where he was taking her or what he wanted from her. All she knew was that she had to find a way to escape and get help. She struggled against her restraints, using all her strength to break free. As she fought for her freedom, Rachel couldn't help but wonder, how did she get herself into this situation? What was in the package that was so important that the stranger was willing to kidnap her for it? And most importantly, would she be able to escape before it was too late? Rachel's mind was racing with fear and anxiety as the stranger drove through the dark and stormy night, his grip on the steering wheel tight and unwavering. Rachel had no idea where he was taking her or what he was planning to do with her. But one thing was certain: she needed to get away from him before it was too late. She continued to struggle against her restraints, wriggling her body and trying to loosen the ropes that bound her. She could feel the cold metal of the handcuffs biting into her skin, causing her wrists to ache with pain. But she didn't let that stop her. She was determined to escape, no matter what. As the car drove on, Rachel began to notice something strange. The streets they were driving on seemed to be getting narrower and more isolated. The houses and buildings grew farther apart, and soon they were driving on a deserted road in the middle of nowhere. Rachel's heart sank as she realized what was happening. The stranger was taking her to some remote location where he could do whatever he wanted with her. She knew she had to act fast, before it was too late. Just then, she heard the sound of police sirens in the distance. Her heart leapt with hope. Maybe the stranger had been spotted by the authorities, and they were on his tail. Rachel knew she had to do something to alert the police to her presence. She began to shout and scream, making as much noise as she could. The stranger tried to silence her, but she was relentless. Her screams echoed through the car, piercing the silence of the night. Just then, the car screeched to a halt, and Rachel heard the sound of the door opening. She felt a hand on her arm, pulling her out of the car. The rain was pounding against her face, and she could barely see anything through the darkness. But she didn't let that stop her. She kicked and struggled, trying to free herself from the stranger's grip. Just then, the police arrived on the scene, their sirens blaring. The stranger panicked and tried to run, but he was quickly apprehended by the officers. Rachel breathed a sigh of relief as she watched the man being taken away in handcuffs. It was over. Rachel was safe. As she sat in the back of the police car, shivering from the cold and wet, she couldn't help but wonder who was the stranger, and what was in that package. She knew she might never find out, but one thing was certain: she would never forget the terror she had experienced that night. And she would never take her safety for granted again. Rachel sat in the back of the police car, her heart still racing with fear and adrenaline. The rain continued to pour down, drumming against the roof of the car and creating a soothing background noise. But Rachel couldn't relax. She needed to know what was in that package, and who the stranger was. After what felt like an eternity, the police officers returned to the car. They told Rachel that the stranger was a wanted criminal, responsible for a string of burglaries and robberies in the area. The package, they said, contained stolen goods, jewelry, cash, and other valuables that he had taken from his victims. Rachel couldn't believe it. She had been kidnapped by a criminal, and if it weren't for her quick thinking and bravery, she might never have been found. She shuddered at the thought of what might have happened if she hadn't managed to escape. The police drove Rachel back to her home, where she was met by her worried family. They had been frantic with worry when they realized she was missing, and they hugged her tightly as soon as she walked through the door. Rachel told them everything that had happened, leaving out no details. Her family listened in horror as she recounted her ordeal, and they praised her for her bravery and quick thinking. In the days and weeks that followed, Rachel struggled to come to terms with what had happened. She found herself reliving the nightmare over and over again, unable to shake the feeling of fear and vulnerability that had taken hold of her. But as time passed, Rachel began to heal. She received counseling and support from her family and friends, and she learned to cope with the trauma of her experience. She also became an advocate for safety awareness, speaking out about the importance of being vigilant and prepared for potential dangers. In the end, Rachel's experience had taught her an invaluable lesson: that life is precious, and that we should never take our safety for granted. She knew that she had been lucky to escape with her life, and she was determined to make the most of it. Thanks for listening to Tale Spinners. If you enjoyed the video, please like, share, and subscribe for more fantastic storytelling.